Hey YouTube. So with the rotation coming up this next week, I just wanted to go over my red steel list that I was using all last set. This is something that I was just trying to get better at the game, and I thought it looked fun to play. And I went through many iterations of this, really trying to center it around a few cards. And I was pretty happy with how it turned out. The way I felt at the end of the set, though, at set champs, was just that the other decks that we were playing against, the meta decks, were just too good. It really wasn't that this deck wasn't good. It just felt like those ones were just kind of overpowering. And now with rotation, I'm getting a little bit more excited that maybe this is something I can figure out for this next set. So I'll get into it a little bit just to give you an idea of why I was doing what I was doing and how it turned out for me. I only played in one set champs this set just because I knew that this was off meta and probably not going to do very well. But looking at the deck list, you can see here I'm using the Raya, and I was also using the Maui Half Shark. And I was using them both in a very similar way, with One Last Hope being able to attack ready characters, and for Maui Half Shark being able to use Fan the Flames. Really, I was trying to make this an attacking deck where I could attack upright characters and then just gain lore that way. So building around those, I went through so many iterations of this deck. I think on Lorcanito I played, it was like 700 games, which is way too many games. But during the set, I went through trying to just maximize using this, knowing that it wasn't going to be as competitive as I would have liked. Now that I've been seeing the new set or the rotation set coming out, it seems like it should be even better than it was. But we'll get into that, and I'm gonna have to do some theory crafting with that too, just to see what's going to fit and what can leave. But I can get into that in a little bit. So first things first is this Raya card. This one did get reprinted, so I'm pretty excited about that. Basically, the whole deck is built around this card. So during your turn, whenever this character banishes another character in a challenge, you may ready this character, and she can't quest for the rest of this turn. So what's really fun about this character is it is a 2/3, which is not very good for strength, but if you pair it with One Last Hope, which is also getting reprinted, if you pair it with One Last Hope, chosen character gains resist +2, and then or until the start of your next turn, which is important. And then if a hero character is chosen, which Raya is, they may also challenge ready characters this turn. So, especially against like aggro decks, it would work really well. Where if I had another character out, I would be able to sing One Last Hope onto Raya, and then Raya could basically take out the whole side if it's aggro. The issue that I ran into was this strength. So this 2 strength is difficult. I went through a few iterations where I was using like Lumiere, and a couple like Phil, a couple of the cards that buff characters while challenging. And what I landed on is using Imperial Bow, and Medallion Weights was kind of the best way to do this. Sometimes even Vitalosphere, just because they added the Challenger for that turn. Imperial Bow is where I landed for dealing with evasive characters. Because my whole deck is, for the most part, all the attacking characters are all hero characters, this Imperial Bow was one of the more important ones. So this one is chosen hero character gains Challenger +2 and evasive this turn. That Challenger +2 was huge for Raya. Being able to just spend one, give Raya +2, so it would be 4/3. And if you can get One Last Hope on it, then it's a 4/3 with 2 resist. Basically, it can wipe basically anything, especially with the evasive that it's giving on that turn. So post-rotation, I'm not sure what I'll do without an Imperial Bow, but I'll just talk about this pre-rotation just to kind of go over how it worked. There really weren't a lot of good one-drop options. I was using the Robin Hood just to be able to shift into this Robin Hood, and then I was using a Whole New World at that point, if I could, just to get going and make sure that I had enough ink, and I had a full hand of cards so that I could keep playing. Really, with Whole New World, I really only used it at the beginning of games, and then if if I was hunting at the end of the game for something that would win me the game, then I would use it a little bit later. But a lot of times I had to be really careful with that. In between, I would use medallion weights. I also tried using the 4-cost stitch a couple times too, but I just found that really the ones that worked the most, Whole New World, of course, medallion weights was really helpful, and the 5-cost Queen of Hearts was always really helpful too. And that one was kind of hard to cut just for card draw. But basically, the way that this played, I would play Robin Hood on 1, or Vitalosphere. And then on 2, I'm trying to get out Calhoun. Smee was there just to be more of an aggro option. I didn't really love when I had Smee out. I was usually happier when I had Calhoun out. And then 3, I usually used Shere Khan. So this is the whenever your character challenges another character, gain 1 lore. I would use this on 3, especially if I started with Vitalosphere. Because on 4, what I could do is play Raya for 3. Pop Vitalosphere for 1, so it gives Raya rush on that turn and +2 challenger. So made her a 4/3. And then Shere Khan was able to sing One Last Hope. So it was kind of a mini board wipe that also had 1 lore for each character I hit this way. I also did that sometimes with Pete. If I could play Pete on 3 if I didn't have a Shere Khan, I would still do the same thing just to clear the board and get board advantage. But it wasn't as impactful as doing it with Shere Khan. Again, you can kind of see the makeup of how I'm gaining lore. Shere Khan every time that they attack. Goofy gaining 2 lore every time he attacks, so that synergizes with Shere Khan really well. Pete was there as the reason that Pete's in any deck. Just kind of a tech card. It's also a good body at 3/3. Really good singer for some of this. Maui was next. Really, I just found that I needed rush cards. So Maui was really helpful. It was also something that could sing a whole new world. Mushu was a lot of how I gained lore. So once I got Mushu out, especially if I had some of these other cards, like if Calhoun, and even if it's just Pete, but definitely if Shere Khan. If it's Calhoun, Shere Khan, and then Mushu was out there as well, that meant that every time Calhoun took out a character, they'd gain 2 from Calhoun, 1 from Shere Khan, and then 2 from Mushu. So Calhoun could hit a character and gain 5 lore by themselves. And then because I had Fan the Flames, you'd be able to ready Calhoun and do the same thing again. One Last Hope was able to work on Calhoun, so Calhoun could attack ready characters and kind of do the same thing. Robin Hood was just kind of a big Calhoun that could sing a whole new world, so that was pretty important. And then the Maui Half Shark. This one, I mean, really, I'm almost through the whole deck at this point and how it works. It was very straightforward. Basically, what I was trying to do is use Calhoun to gain lore with Shere Khan, Goofy to gain lore with Shere Khan, and then once I got up to enough ink that I could start playing with Maui, if Maui was out and I had either if I had Fan the Flames and One Last Hope in my hand, or if I just had One Last Hope and Fan the Flames was in my discard, say I used it earlier, and I would do that on purpose and make sure I wasn't inking it until it was in my discard. If that was the case, then Maui gets into a loop that's just like Raya, only it's a little bit less efficient just like when you're playing with the cards because you have to use ink every time it does it, but it's much more impactful. So basically, you'd play, if you had Fan the Flames and One Last Hope in your hand, you could sing One Last Hope with Maui, which would turn him sideways and he'd gain 1 lore for playing an action. And then you could use Fan the Flames to ready him, gain 1 lore for playing an action. And now you've only used 1 ink on that turn because you used Maui to sing One Last Hope. So that's 2 lore already. And now Maui can attack ready characters, and every time he attacks a character, you're returning an action card, which would be Fan the Flame. So you get into a loop that's kind of fun. I won a couple games like this where the opponent had like 15 lore, and they have a full board, and really there's no other way to win. But because I had this set up, really they couldn't play anything any turn after that, because I would just play the One Last Hope onto Maui, keep fanning the flames every time I attack. And then every time I attack, fan the flames, ready it. And then on the very last one, instead of pulling back fan the flames, I would pull back one last hope. And then that meant the next turn, no matter what they play, I'm going to be able to attack it. I'll have resist +2. Especially if you ever have a Mushu out, you basically just win games that way. So Maui and the Fan the Flames, One Last Hope was kind of a closer. And then Raya was, kind of a sweep early that could also close a game. And then the real way that you were gaining lore really was off of Calhoun, Robin Hood, Goofy, and basically anyone once Mushu or a couple Mushus are out, you could really win a game that way. And the main way to play against a Ruby Steel deck in the past has always been to just not turn sideways. And that's where One Last Hope came in. And just being able to sing it or even just playing it with ink and putting it onto Raya, Calhoun. I've even won games playing it onto the one-cost Robin Hood, Goofy, Maui Half Shark, all the Robin Hoods, not Mushu, because these are tech cards. So basically, you kind of notice that everyone's a hero. Smee isn't, because that was just there for an aggro card. Pete was a tech card, and then Mushu's there to, just like Shere Khan, they're there to gain lore on attacks. And then the rest of this, I only was playing 2 Vitalispheres just because I could get it out on turn 1 if I didn't play Robin Hood. Really, the deck struggled on turn 1. But a lot of times I gained advantage by not playing on turn 1 just because I had more cards. And I was able to ink and then go one more turn later if I was having card draw issues, which really is the crux of the problem with this deck. And it's something that I did get around with Medallion Weights and with Whole New World. Medallion Weights was really good, adds to strength, which is really good for Raya. It's also really good for Calhoun to be able to take out anything and then also get card draw. Imperial Bow was good for any evasives, and basically the way that I played this is I would even play this on turn 2 if I was playing against any purple deck. So if I see purple, I'm holding on to Imperial Bow. I was hard mulliganing to make sure that I had Imperial Bow in my hand. And then Thebes was kind of a closer too. I almost never played this early, but basically, so this one is you gain 2 lore when you attack and banish a character while that character is in the location. I was using it as a closer, especially if it was something where I could get Raya or Maui into there at the end. It was pretty cheap to do because it just cost 2 to play, and then you could pay 1 to put it in there. So it was a good closer. But in the end, what I ran into, a lot of the issues that I ran into were dealing with evasives, especially the Diablo on turn 2. Is it Peter Pan, I think, that was evasive as well. Genie, and a lot of that stuff. So if I didn't find Imperial Bow, I could get in a lot of trouble because it really took me a long time to get to Maui Half Shark. I did go through iterations where I was playing with Moana, the 4-cost evasive, that also gave Challenger, and that's a really good card, and I could see that coming out in this next set. But I just found that the most efficient way, just because everyone basically was a hero, was to use Imperial Bow because it served multiple purposes. So that was the deck. When I went to set champs, I did pretty well, surprisingly well. I made a couple mistakes early that probably cost me top 4 to get into the top cut. And then I was in a matchup where I would have gotten into top 4 had I had ink on my last hand. And you can tell that I don't have many uninkables in this deck. And I think I had like a Whole New World and 2 One Last Hopes in my hand. And all I needed was an ink to be able to play the last card. I think it probably would have even been a Robin Hood, and that would have been enough with the Vitalisphere I had out to take the win. So just got unlucky, and my opponent played really well. And again, going in, I didn't really expect much, but I was able to get top 8, which was kind of my goal. But it was a little disappointing just because I wanted to see how it would do. But again, then I saw that the finals was just Steel Song anyway, and I'm pretty sure either of those decks would have beaten me pretty easily, and it would have been pretty rare that I got the setup that I needed to be able to win. Um, Something that I do want to go over, and here I'm just setting this up here. Something that I want to go over is what we're losing and what I ran into that were issues and why I think Ruby Steel is going to be really good this next set, maybe in a different way than what everybody else thinks. I think everybody else, and I do think that it's going to be fun to play this way too. I think everybody else is going to treat it like a Ruby Steel song, which I think is going to be really fun. I'm generally a Steel Song player with Amber prior to this set, so this was really fun just to kind of take me out of my comfort zone. I was able to win a set champs last set with that, so it kind of freed me up where I felt like it was a set where I could learn something new because I am a new player as of January. Um, and I just thought that it would be fun. So I feel like I did learn a lot with this. The issues I ran into were the 2-cost Diablo against green. That was tough. As far as taking care of like the Prince John and things like that, it really wasn't too bad. It was usually evasives that I ran into that were most of the problem. And Diablo getting value a couple turns in a row could be pretty tough. And it took this deck a couple, probably until turn 4 or so, turn 3, turn 4, before they could even take care of any of that. So that made it tough. Um, but post rotation, that won't be here. Be Prepared was really rough because this is a deck that really wants to get set up and then start to, kind of have a chess match. And anytime you're playing against Be Prepared, they're going to have a card advantage most of the time because this deck has trouble with getting card draw. And what would happen is either you couldn't establish enough because they were going to be prep and then you would just lose, or you would overcommit to the board, they would have beat prep, and then you would just lose. So that was a really difficult card to play into. Same with McDuck Manor. It was really difficult to get those off the board quick. Having Maui, it felt a little bit better than it did with, like Amber Steel Song, because you could rush the Maui, you could use medallion weights and do damage, but that willpower that McDuck Manor had was too much. Is it 9? So even putting medallion weights onto Maui only hits for 8. That's rough. So being able to take it out the turn that it comes out on was really difficult, and it slowed everything down quite a bit. And it a lot of times turned really fun games into games that just got away. So I'm not really sad to see that card go. I don't know that B Prep, that I totally agree with B Prep being taken off. I am happy about it as far as for this deck. I really thought that they were going to print something that was very similar to B Prep, but maybe toned down or different the way that they did with A Whole New World and Beyond the Horizon. But it seems like this next set is probably going to be a pretty heavy Ruby Steel set as far as seeing it out there. I think there's going to be Ruby Steel song players. I don't know that there's going to be a lot of Ruby players that played the way that I did with this. And I think that might be unfortunate for them just on a fun perspective, because this was a really fun deck to play. And let me pull it up. I'm going to show... Where is it? Yeah, so these are the cards that are still there post rotation that were in this deck. And you can see that a lot of the... I think that a lot of the core cards that were here, or are here, make the deck still function very similar to the way that it did before. And it also solved a couple of the problems that I had while losing a couple cards that were helpful. So one of the things that's really important is Calhoun stays, Raya stays, Shere Khan is going to stay. As far as a turn 2, turn 3, turn 4 play, these are all great. Medallion weights is really good too, because if you play Raya, say you play Calhoun on 2, Raya on 3, you can play medallion weights on 4 and pop medallion weights onto your Raya. And if they have anything exerted, then you'd be able to take them out, or you could pop it onto your Calhoun, and then get a card draw along with the lore. Calhoun would be able to take out anything that's 5 willpower. So that's really important. So there might be some synergy there that I'm pretty excited about. Shere Khan is really cool. There was something that I didn't mention earlier. The most fun game that I've ever won was with this deck, and it was against um, it was a Ruby Amber deck, and it was an aggro deck, and they realized pretty quick what I was trying to do, so they just weren't turning their cards sideways, and they got all of the lore that they needed basically to be able to quest, and then on their next turn just quest again and win. And then they played the 8 willpower Minnie Mouse that's a bodyguard. But she's a hero. So one of the more fun things that I've ever done is I was all set up to wipe the board other than this Minnie Mouse. And because she's a hero, I played the Imperial Bow onto her and gave her evasive. And then I was able to ignore her entirely and then just take out the board and win. That has to be the most satisfying win I've had in Lorcana to date. And unfortunately, that is something that's not going to continue because I don't have Imperial Bow anymore. So I'm not really sure how I'm going to deal with evasives, but I do think with the next set rotation, there are more options for evasive in the form of characters instead of having like a one card way of handling that. So that was just something I wanted to mention. I think the core, as far as like turn 2, turn 3, is all going to stay. Pete's really important. It depends on how much the actions are a problem. I am wondering how necessary Pete's going to be, or at least how many I'm going to have to run. But it's too powerful of a card not to, so I think it just has to stay. Mushu, everything kind of runs off of Mushu and Shere Khan. The big Robin Hood I think is still important. When I didn't play the one cost Robin Hood, a lot of times I ended up inking it later because there were just better options, and I would hard play for 5 ink the big Robin Hood later anyway. A lot of times just to have a way to sing A Whole New World. I'm not sure Maui needs to stay in this deck, the Half Shark. It depends on where I go with this, but really he was there mostly for the Fan the Flames One Last Hope rotation, and because Fan the Flames is gone, really we can't do that anymore. One Last Hope being here, I was really excited. I had a lot of friends text me right when this got announced to let me know that it was staying, along with Raya, because they know that I played this the whole set, and really that was the crux of this deck was One Last Hope and Raya. So I am excited about that. That is the core of this. And the Medallion Weights is really good too, just for card draw and for the extra challenger on that turn for any of the characters. So Calhoun can hit for 5, Raya can hit for 4, Robin Hood can hit for 5. That's really important because a lot of the cards, I think, in the aggro decks are going to have a lot of willpower. And then so things that I'm thinking about going forward, it's probably for another video when I start to put something together. But basically this is the core that I believe I'm going to continue playing. There's a possibility I get rid of the Maui Half Shark or at least bring it down on the amount that I'm playing. There's too many good cards in the next set that I think would help this. That I'm kind of running into issues. The first iteration that I tried to put together, I think it had like 76 cards or something. So obviously that's not going to work. But a couple of the cards that are really important, I don't have a good one cost card, so I think I might end up running the Mulan 1 cost steel card and then running it with the 6 cost shift Mulan, just for board wipe and being able to have a little extra board control that way and have a shift target, something that can help with singing Beyond the Horizon. That's going to be important too, as I do think I'm going to end up using Beyond the Horizon. I tried Desperate Plan. I also tried using Doc. I tried using the Queen of Hearts, the 5 cost Queen of Hearts. And I think out of all of them, the 5 cost Queen of Hearts will be important because it did play very well in this deck. And then the other one will be Beyond the Horizon. I do think with the singers that are coming out on turn 2, that's going to be really important. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. Please don't roast me in the comments. I think the two cost card that's a singer, is it Powerline? Or is it Goof? I'll have to look, or you'll have to let me know. I do think that I'll end up potentially trying to get the 3 cost. I think that is the Goofy. That's the 3 cost, maybe. Uh, and then the 2 cost power line in, just so I have a singer. Because that's something that when the 2 and 3 cost cards come out, between the two of them, they'd be able to sing Beyond the Horizon. So on turn 4, I would have that option. That could be really important. The other thing that's really important too is having a 2 cost card that can sing One Last Hope, because that means that now I can start playing Raya on turn 3, and it frees me up a little bit on turn 4. Maybe I can play Medallion Weights, uh, put that onto Raya, still sing One Last Hope with your 2 cost card, and now Raya is gaining card draw on every turn, or every banishing ready characters, hitting them for 4, and really not taking any damage most of the time. So that's important too. I do think having options like that, or putting the Shere Khan out on 3, or excuse me, on 4 after that, and then being able to sing One Last Hope again with your 2 cost card. It just frees up some options early, and I'm really excited about that. It was something that this deck was missing before. But again, it got weaker in the 1 cost part of the deck. So I am thinking about what I'm going to do in the 1 cost and the 4. Super Goof is gone. That was a really important card. But there are the newer cards like the Moana that's evasive that gives Challenger. That's a really good one. Stitch, the new Stitch that when you attack a character, it gives you, or when you banish, I believe, it gives you 1 lore and 1 card draw. That could be really good. It's a hero, so you can use One Last Hope. So those are both really important too, and then that might even out the curve a little bit with the 4 cost cards getting up to 5. And then maybe I don't play with the Maui Half Shark if I'm running out of cards that I can play with, and keep it a little bit lower to the ground, but really while keeping the core with the Mushu, Shere Khan, and then ways of gaining lore like Calhoun and the 5 cost Robin Hood. So more to come on that. I just wanted to get my thoughts out just before the new set rotation comes out this next week. But if anyone was running Ruby Steel, or if you were interested in running Ruby Steel, or if you just have opinions about this at all, please leave comments on this, because I love the discussion. And I will be on Twitch. I took a bit of a break just because I kind of burned myself out playing way too much Lorcana last set. And I didn't really know what I was going to do this next set post-rotation, but I do think I'm going to stick with this and see if I can figure it out post-rotation, because I do think it's going to be a lot better. Not that it got much better, but I think a lot of the decks that were keeping it down did get worse. And because of that, I do think that this has a chance to at least be as competitive as the other decks for at least this next set. Who knows what happens after that, but again, I enjoyed the discussion. Please, come hang out with me on Twitch. That's just at Gherkin, and then I'll post again when I have my first set of this that I'm going to be trying for post-rotation. So thanks again. I'll see you on Twitch, or I'll see you again on here.